Welcome to the Grow Podcast. I'm Pastor Mike with New Hope Network. We're here to help you take your next step in your relationship with Jesus. I'm so glad you're with us today.
What's up, New Hope family? Welcome to the Grow Podcast, episode 60. My name is David. I'm excited that you're here, and with me as always is Pastor Mike. Hello, Pastor Mike.
So if it's episode 60, we're getting close to retirement age. Is that true?
Oh.
So
we
at
got
65, we're done?
Five more episodes of the Grow Podcast, and then that'll be it. Then Pastor Michael will start a new podcast with a better host.
Oh, I can't wait.
Thank you. I don't know.
No, I love hosting things with
you. We've started a new series on the weekend, so we've got new topics to talk about. We're excited to get to that. It's episode 60. You had something clever to say. I was excited.
I don't know if it was clever, but I had something to say.
Hattie preached this last weekend, so I think we spend the first 10 minutes talking about how cool Hattie is.
Hattie is one of our favorite people around here at New Hope. She's amazing. She's our discipleship director for the Williston campus, but also serves and helps out with New Hope here online. And
she was on episode 50 of the
over,
Grow Podcast. She threw the party.
And this was her first time. So she's been studying and working. This is not her first time teaching. She teaches our discipleship classes, and she's actually taught at our Tioga campus before.
Yep.
But this is her first time teaching across all three of our campuses, Williston, Tioga, and online. And she was pretty nervous.
She was.
She is always amazing. I've never known her to not be amazing. It was fun to watch her and coach her through the process.
She had a good coach as well. So
Pastor Kylie is an amazing coach.
I should have taken the week off, and we should have had Hattie here with you. She's probably better. That's the problem, though. I'm certain she'd.
We don't want her to show us up.
She'd be better at this than I am, and then I would never be back, and be like, "Does David really need to work here anymore?" That's the darkest timeline. We're not going to go down the dark.
I had a friend who was in radio years ago, did the morning show, and he said, when you're gone, you never want somebody better than you to substitute for you. You always want them to have you back.
That's so Lou Gehrig. Are you familiar with who Lou Gehrig is?
Thank you for asking.
I just never know. He has a famous disease named after him, but he also had set the record for the most consecutive games played in Major League Baseball until Cal Ripken finally broke it. But he only got the job because the regular first baseman, I can't remember if he got sick or just hurt, or if he was hungover. It was something weird where he couldn't, he was out for a little bit. And so a young kid named Lou Gehrig stepped in to play first base, and then played the next 2,600, 2,700 games, whatever crazy number it was in a row. So you don't want Lou Gehrig to come in behind you and take over. That's very common in the sports world, though. It's always weird when you're a part of a team. You're like, I want them to do well while I'm out, but I want my job
better than me. Yeah.
I always wonder that, during football season, the starting quarterback gets hurt and misses a game. And then, if it's Tom Brady, obviously their job is secure. But if they're one of those fringy starters, and then the backup just kills it for 2 games, they're probably not. Super happy.
I'm not the sports trivia person. I want to say there was a year with our team, the Vikings,
Skol,
a while ago, where the backup quarterback came in and killed it.
Case Keenum brought us to the NFC Championship game, which we won't talk about how that game went. But
see, I remember sports stuff. So
you do, he I think he was even our third quarterback.
Really?
Because I think
you would know.
Maybe he was just the backup that year.
This is the Vikings podcast, folks. It's
the Grow as a Vikings fan podcast.
Yeah. We always have right at the top of our notes in preparation just a few minutes of nonsense.
Yeah, no more nonsense than being a Vikings fan.
Yeah. Thank you.
Season's about to get started, though, so this is our year. This is going to be it. It's finally going to happen.
We've said that for a few years.
What are you going to do for sermon illustrations if the Vikings ever win a Super Bowl?
I will gladly forfeit those. Speaking of which, join us for this series, because I do have another Vikings reference in this series.
Of course you do.
Yeah.
There's been a couple good things that have happened.
It's actually next week's message. Yep.
Okay. Well, I can't wait to feel bad about my football team.
Yeah.
Right before the season starts, where then I will probably regularly feel bad about my football team. One of the nice things about
normally
working...
feel good till playoffs.
one of the fun things about working at the Williston campus, when I guess Jordan's sometimes in Tioga, but most of the time he's in Williston, is he'll start watching the game on his iPad once the second service ends, and like in the office before he goes home. You get to hear all of his anger and frustration with his beloved Vikings yelled towards his iPad.
There's a lot of emotion.
Well, why don't we talk about you being an introvert today, Pastor Mike?
So in this series, Be the Church, we're obviously talking about what it means for us, each one of us individually, to be the church, because we've talked about the fact that we are the church in its smallest form. And at New Hope, we define what it looks like to be the church with 3 words, all begin with the same letter because,
shocking,
that's what I do.
Pastors are legally obligated to focus on
last
alliteration.
week we talked about go, lost people, spiritually lost people finding Jesus and what that means. And last week we talked about why. This week, Hattie talked about grow. Next week we'll talk about give, which is the one nobody wants to talk about, right? But one of the things, in fact, one of the primary values that we have, and it's a strongly biblical value around here at New Hope, is we cannot grow to be the person God designed us to be without people in our lives.
But you don't want people in your life.
Well, I am.
That may have been.
I'm not a raging introvert,
sure.
but
Yeah, that's fair.
I get the older I get, the more introverted I get.
Are you trending more introverted as you get older? Yeah.
Which you and I have kind of typically, when we talk about personality tests,
my favorite
things.
I
know you. I love them. I'm looking around here because I've got some bookshelves with some of my box, and there's one bookshelf that's like half personality studies and things up here. But you and I both typically, it's interesting, kind of are on the margin.
Yeah,
introvert,
right.
Extrovert. You probably lean more extrovert than
Barely.
I do. But the older I get, the more I get. And some of that I think is just what you do.
Yeah.
So when we say, especially for us introverts, when we say we need people, us introverts are like, no, I don't. I don't.
So do you is that something you're intentional about then? Like having
I have to be intentional
small
about
group or having people, that community around
and I
you?
think, personality wise, one of the things we need to clarify, because people think, extroverts are always the people that are out there, life of the party. Not necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
Some introverts are the life of the party. Introvert, extrovert is about how much energy it takes us and where we get our energy.
Yeah.
So introverts can have deep friendships and circles of friends, maybe not as many circles of friends. Extroverts often can have a lot of friends, but not necessarily as deep. So I have to be intentional about it because it's easy for me to just go, here's just a few, my small group of friends, and that's not all bad. And I've had to be intentional about small groups for me. And obviously as pastor, senior pastor, you kind of I have to be careful with small groups and some of that. So I've actually several small groups that I'm part of.
Yeah.
Some of them double as also some leadership groups around here. The elder team is one of my small groups, and thoroughly enjoy our elder team. And then you and I actually, one of the ways we became friends is we were in a small group together for a while, and then after that year, I quit that small group.
Yeah, he'd had enough.
I'd had enough.
And then I was like, let's do a podcast instead.
Yeah. But Kylie and I have been part of incredible small groups over the year. I've been part of men's small groups. I have a lot of favorite small groups, but one of my favorite small groups was the church we were planning in California. And we just still to this day, have deep friendships. And in fact, one couple came to know the Lord through that small group, had been living together, not married. And so we hosted a wedding for them in our backyard. The small group came together, and it's just one of our favorite moments. That's and just cool. Favorite community moments for us.
You keep saying that we need people and things, but whether it's an introvert or just people that don't feel like they need that, what would you say to that? What would you say to someone who says, do I really need a small group? Do I really need people?
And, before I was senior pastor, I've been a small group pastor since 1994, 95. So I've had people just accuse me. Well, it's your job.
Do you know how old I was in 1994?
Do I want to know?
Sorry, please continue.
Yeah, it's your job, or you're just doing small groups to build the organization.
Sure.
But no, the reason I believe so deeply in small groups and have invested, obviously, most of my ministry career life and just life in small groups is because it is deeply, profoundly biblical. And the reason it's deeply, profoundly biblical is because God wove it into the fabric, I think, of the universe. When you look at Genesis 1, very beginning of the Bible, it talks about creation. And the name for God that's used there is Elohim, which actually is a plural name, not that God is pantheistic,
Right.
Multiple gods, or, there's several different words we could use there. And it says, let us make man. What it's saying is God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, 3 persons, and yet the Bible is very clear, 1 person. What it's saying is he is the origin of community. He is relational even within himself, and that's hard for us to understand because he created us in his image, but he created us to need other people. He doesn't need other people because he is within himself and made us. And then you look at that, what's the first thing he designed? He designed man and waited for a little while and said, it's not good for what? For man to be alone. Created woman, and we could have all kinds of fun things there.
Stole our rib to do it.
Yeah, stole our rib to do it.
Man,
you know why it's woman? It's Adam said, whoa, man, I'm sorry, dad joke. The producer is shaking his head in the back.
You always mix one in.
Yeah, I have to.
I think most people enjoyed it.
But,
post in the comments on YouTube if you enjoy Pastor Mike's dad jokes.
I mean, the first design, God designed family and designed us to need, not just, being people, but need people. And then you trace God's plan for redemption after the fall. So the fall, what was the primary thing it broke? It broke the most important thing about us, relationship. First thing was a relationship with God, messed up a relationship with one another, messed up. And God's entire plan for redemption is relational. So you fast forward in Genesis, from Genesis 1, Genesis 2, Genesis 3, Genesis 12. God chooses Abraham. And what's he say to Abraham? I'm going to use you for the plan of redemption. And what's he say? The primary way is I'm going to have you become a family. And he becomes a nation of people. And we trace this down. And then Jesus comes. And the day of really his public turn from growing up in the ministry, it's his baptism. And in the baptism, what do we see? We see Jesus, God the Son. We see the Spirit ascend on him in the shape of a dove. John the Baptist says that. It's the Holy Spirit. And what do we hear? God's voice from heaven, this is my Son in whom I'm well pleased. We see all 3 persons in the one God in one moment. And in that moment, he's saying, this is relationship. This is relationship. And then the first thing Jesus does when he starts is what? He goes around and he invites 12 people. First thing he does is form a small group.
Does that mean all of our small groups have to be 12 people? Yeah. Well, 13, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and then they lost one,
Yeah.
And then what happens after Jesus ascends? Pentecost. And the church begins. And the church is called what? The ecclesia, the gathered people. So this is just strongly woven into not just organization. I mean, we need some organization, but into our spiritual DNA.
So that's okay. God says so.
Yeah.
But which is obviously enough for all of us. But what's like what's the benefit? Like why do I need people? Because clearly God designed us that way. But what does that look like then?
Yeah. And people who enjoy people, and we'll pick on extroverts and introverts, that you don't need much convincing there.
Sure.
Although it's like, why do I need a small group? I've got lots of people.
Hattie's got to be an extrovert, right? You would
I
know
believe
off
so.
her personality test.
I believe so.
She's
right.
a people person at least.
Yeah.
If not.
Yeah.
And I'm half and half.
You're half
I feel
and
like
half.
every time you make me take that test, it goes the opposite way. Barely an introvert or barely an extrovert.
And
you're way on the introvert side.
There are times,
Well, compared to me,
compared to a lot of people. And I've kind of put this into 2 categories, the negatives and the positives. The negative reasons, not the negatives of needing people, but the negatives about us that need people. So, and I'll just make it personal here. Does that make sense?
Try to explain that again.
Yeah.
The negatives of what?
The negatives, there are things about us that need people that are negative, and we need people to turn them into positive. Okay. So and I'll just make these I statements. I'm a naturally self-centered person. And we all are. Mm-hmm. Sin did that to us. Romans chapter 1, Romans chapter 2, Romans chapter 3. I mean, you just look and you talk, and it talks about how self-focused, self-centered we are. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I prefer comfort. If you give me a choice, do something uncomfortable, do something comfortable. I'm going to choose something comfortable. Don't make me get out of my lazy boy. I prefer to avoid things that I need to grow, not because I don't want to grow, but because growth primarily comes through hard things. Yeah. And all three of those things are things I need other people to prompt me on, to cheer me on, to challenge me. If you ever want to discover how self-centered you are, get married or have kids.
I very much agree.
I mean, you can kind of get away with being self-centered in dating a little bit, but you discovered a little bit. But those two things. Yep. And I sometimes wonder if that's why God created that process, is to remind us. The other reason, kind of a negative thing about us is that I need people is I'm not smart enough. I need other people. There are things I don't know that other people know. There are things I haven't experienced, things I haven't felt, things I haven't considered, things I haven't thought through. And I have a limited perspective. We've talked about this a little bit. I have blind spots that I just don't see about myself. Just this week, there was something that was really bugging me, and I'm not even sure why. It was really weird. We had to shuffle offices around here and things, and I was just moving kind of back into my office, and I just sat down, and I'm like, there is something going. It's just really weird. And Kylie came in and started pressing some questions, and she pointed out some blind spots about me, and I'm like, I don't want to hear this, but I needed to hear it. Yep. I haven't experienced things. We've talked about personalities. I'm a single personality type, and I need other people. Yep. And then you add culture, context, gender, all those things into it. I need other people to open myself up to something other than self. Mm-hmm. But the positives of it, we've talked about it. I'm made for a relationship. Right. I just thrive better. I grow best in relationship. The Bible says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. And here's the big thing, and we could probably do an entire podcast on this sometime. But I've discovered the positive of this. I need at least 4 kinds of people. I need someone to encourage me. I need some people who just listen to me and let me process and cheer me on. Mm-hmm. I also need people to help me fix stuff. And most of the time, those are 2 different kinds of people. I'm a fixer by nature. So sometimes, like in our marriage, Kylie will I just need you to sit and not say a word, because I want to fix it. Yep. And I need both of those kinds of people. Yeah. I need dreamers and challengers. People who challenge, people who dream with me. It's one of the reasons I love our friendship is, I love to sit when we go out to lunch and we just kind of dream about some things. I also need reality people. People who will just say, that doesn't work. And dreamers and reality people are normally not the same person. I was going to say, that's
the lunch you go out to after you and I have lunch.
Yeah. It's like, that's a great dream. Let's talk about whether that can happen or not. And I need those people in my life.
For sure. That's not necessarily an easy thing. You said you had to be intentional about it. It's not easy for you. Sometimes for some people, it might, they might have negative experiences with small groups. Yeah. I had a small group in it. Maybe it wasn't even that big of a deal. It's just I had a small group and it fizzled out, and I didn't really gain any great friends from it, and I've just been living life without it. For some other people, it might have ended in an ugly way where things got messy, as things can get when people have relationships, because we're all flawed and fail from time to time. But so what do you say to those people who are like, it's too hard, or I've had a bad experience with it before, I don't want to get hurt in that way again, or anything like that?
I think you touched on this just a moment ago. The nature of relationship means it's not going to be easy, especially in a sinful world. I'm not sure God designed it to be easy even before sin came in. I think he designed us to need one another, and so when we use, and I'm going to call it what it is, the excuse of I tried a small group once and it didn't work. It's just that. It's an excuse.
Yeah.
Because you could say that about a lot of things that later you discovered were great things, but you've got to work at it. You got to work at it, There's a joke in our family. We have a very, very distant family member, extended relative, who said, "You know what? I tried dieting once, but I got hungry, so I stopped."
I like that person.
Sometimes
we've all been there.
Sometimes things are hard, right? Some things are difficult. And the verse I just referred to in Proverbs 27:17 talks about that. It says, "As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another." When sparks fly, it means we're sharpening one another, but sparks are flying. And the last time I checked, when iron hits iron, it's making dents. It's, if you were that piece of iron, it doesn't feel good. And you think about this, most of the letters written to churches in the New Testament, what are they written about? They're written to people who are experiencing what? Relational messes. Read 1st and 2nd Corinthians. Talk about a messed up church, Read the letters to the 7 churches at the beginning of the book of Revelation. So here's the big truth when it comes to small groups, because I've had small groups that I've just gone, it doesn't work. And sometimes personalities don't mesh. Sometimes it's season of life. There's some with little kids, some with older kids. Sometimes, you just need that. And before I get to the big truth, something just occurred to me that probably needs to be said. Kylie and I have been talking about this a lot lately, even with our own boys, is there is often this idea that we have. And so let's think back to high school. It's a lot longer for me than it is for you. But in high school, we kind of have this idealistic perspective. These people are going to be my friends for the rest of my life. And for most of us, not all of us, but for most of us, how many high school friends really are friends for the rest of our life? Why? Because relationships by nature grow and change. Very, very rare are lifetime friendships. And that's not saying they can't happen, not saying they shouldn't happen, but just by nature, we're growth-oriented people, and so we're going to move in and out of that. So a small group, sometimes people get into a small group, and it was incredible, and then it changed, and they're like, I'll never find that again, or whatever. And so I think we've got to debunk that myth.
That's been one for us as we've moved. We had an incredible small group in Minnesota when we lived there, and then we moved to Oklahoma and had to leave it behind. And then we had a different, but also small group that we had at our church in Oklahoma, and then we left that and left it behind. So it is hard to think, like, how are we ever going to? And
it's been harder for you to find that kind of small group here.
Yep.
I outed you. I don't know if you're ready to confess that.
No, I think we've even talked about it on the Grow podcast before. Just like it was harder to find a church when we got here, or I don't know if harder, but it just took longer.
Yeah.
It was harder to find those people to that small group. That took a lot longer here as well.
And some of that is because of the season of life. Some of that is because of the community.
I like blaming our kids. I think we just
some of that is that, and some of that may, I think, sometimes is. And we talked. I didn't talk about this specifically this way, but it connects to a message I gave a few weeks ago on risk and Peter stepping out of the boat. Sometimes God allows us and tells us to go into storms to change our focus. Yeah. So where it's harder for us to find those people. So here's the big truth. I really want to land on when it comes to small groups, relationships in general. It's the word endure. Endure. The word endure is mentioned in 14 different books of the Bible in reference in how we should live. Endure. And that's just that word. That's not the word persevere. You add all those things in there. Matthew 18 it basically says, stay in the relationship and have hard conversations. Hebrews 11 talks, it's the hall of faith, but don't run too quickly. Hebrews 12 touches on that too. We could go on. Endure means have healthy boundaries. There's a difference, by the way, in this conversation for another time, between boundaries and rules. Rules are, I'm trying to fix a problem by telling you how to behave. Boundary is, here's how I'm going to live, and don't cross this, that kind of thing. But know how you're wired, know how you recharge, pay attention to your capacity. But the key is a small group is a place for you to grow. Friendships outside of small groups are a place for you to reach. I need people who will help me grow. I also need people in my life because I'm invited to be part of God's mission, where I can partner with them to introduce them to Jesus. And by the way, both of those relationships help me grow. I was talking to a great pastor recently, happens to be your father.
Oh, I've heard of him.
Yeah. And he said the greatest discipleship tool or the greatest growth tool in a church is to make sure we are outwardly focused and reaching lost people. If you want to grow, make sure you have relationships with people who need Jesus, and you have deep relationships with people who will help you go deeper in Jesus.
You have a next step for us this week?
If you aren't in a group, find a group. If you're part of New Hope, especially as we move into this series, we're going to move into late quick commercial in September. The big title of this series is The Greatest Story Ever Told. We're going to walk cover to cover through the Bible this year.
Can't wait.
And we've broken it up in the mini series, so you don't want to say, I'm going to join a small group for 30 some weeks. 6-week series. You can say, I'll try a small group for the first 6 weeks. And we have them for those who are part of New Hope here. There's ways we can do that. And we've got some curriculum for those. Try one out. And don't try it out once. Endure. Stick with it. Stick with it. Because the greatest growth not only comes after a next step, but when we've stuck with it.
Thank you, Pastor Mike. You'll hear us talking a lot about getting signed up for those small groups as kind of fall approaches. But I think I want to say it's newhopehere.com/grouplife or groups/groups. newhopehere.com/groups. You can always go there and see all the groups that are available. So if you're like, well, I want to get in one in, when that series starts, but maybe I don't want to wait until then, which I think you would encourage. There's probably some that are available that you can find and get signed up. And even if you're a New Hope Here person, I know there's an online women's group you can sign up for. So,
and if you can't find one that fits you,
reach out.
Reach out to us. But I've done that where it's like, we'll just invite Kylie and I just invited one other couple. And we just started our own.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Pastor Mike. Episode 60 was a pleasure. Thank all of you again for joining us. If you haven't yet, I really want to encourage you to check out our YouTube channel. If you normally listen to this on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, you can always find the video podcast on YouTube. And who wouldn't want to look at the two of us on video, on stunning 4K video? Our producer just raised his hand, so that was hurtful but fair. But you can always check out the video podcast here. And then there's a lot of other great content and stuff on the YouTube channel as well. Our worship team has amazing music that goes up there. All the New Hope Here weekend services go on there, so you can always catch the message if you ever missed it on the weekend. We always encourage you to go back and listen to the weekend teaching as well. So make sure you subscribe wherever you're listening so you get notified when the new episodes go up. And we would really appreciate any feedback you have, comments, anything like that. Last thing, send in your questions for the next Pastor Mike Q&A. We don't have a specific time set for it, but
the clock is ticking.
Sooner than later. It's not going to be 50 episodes in like last time. We're not waiting till episode 100 because we've already got a few good questions. So send in those questions. You can send them to me, David@newhopewilliston.com, DAVED@newhopewilliston.com. That way Pastor Mike doesn't see them and can't prepare for the questions, so we can throw them at him live.
You guys are mean.
Yeah, it's way more fun that way. We love all of you, and we will see you next time.